Okay, so happy Easter, everyone. It is Easter Sunday. Happy Easter to everyone. Obviously, yesterday was the first FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Manchester City. Really surprised by Man City's tactics and the lack of substitutions from Guardiola. Their first half was absolutely woeful. They fully deserved to lose that game. I've noticed something about Man City. If you employ a very high energy, high press, um, it leads to mistakes that led to the second goal. And then they kept going with that style of play. Hello there, Jordan. So first half, Liverpool, you know, ripped Man City to pieces. I was surprised they didn't get 4 or 5 goals, if I'm brutally honest. City left themselves far too much to do. Yes, Grealish gets the first goal right at the beginning of the second half, but they were still employing that back pass to the goalkeeper. Um, they were still, you know, trying plan A when it clearly not working. And the lack of substitutions from Guardiola until Gabriel Jesus went off with what looks like a knee or a calf injury was really surprising. He does this a lot, and while they score the second goal, make the last few minutes a bit nervy for Liverpool, they left themselves far too much to do. Liverpool still in the hunt for 4 trophies, Man City in the hunt for 2 trophies. It is going to go down to the wire, I think, in the Premier League. And later on today, we have Crystal Palace playing Chelsea in the second semi-final. And Crystal Palace, I think, could be underestimated at their peril. I think Chelsea are looking vulnerable going into this game, and Crystal Palace didn't have a midweek game, so I think Palace advantage to them. Other football news, obviously, Sean Dyche has obviously been sacked by Burnley. They're now looking for a permanent replacement for Sean Dyche for next season. Obviously, Eric Ten Hag is in advanced talks with Manchester United about their managerial vacancy. In regards to Manchester United, Nemanja Matic has announced on social media that he is leaving in the summer on a free. So already, I think Nemanja Matic is going to be the first of many players that leave Manchester United in the summer. There's obviously a debate about Pogba, whether he gets a contract extension, and is he a disruptive influence in the dressing room, and whether whoever comes in can work with Pogba and get the best out of him. The Ronaldo experiment obviously clearly hasn't worked. So there's a lot going on with Manchester United with their managerial hunt. Eric Ten Hag obviously is the out and out favourite and is in advanced talks. But again, as I said in the Manu Matic video, where he's obviously announced that he is leaving, um, that it'll be interesting how many more players follow. I don't read the Daily Mirror. It's tabloid journalism, and not a massive fan of the Daily Mirror, but I'm not surprised that 15 players failed drugs tests for whatever reason. It wouldn't surprise me, considering some of the antics players got up to during lockdown this time 2 years ago. Wouldn't surprise me if there are players who have failed. I'm going to double check, see what if they actually name and shame players, because I believe they're not allowed to do that until um, uh, B sample. It depends on league to league, so I'll be very interested to see if they've actually named any of the players. Um, let's have a look. Let's have a look, see what actually is in the article. Let's have a look. Oh, it's also in the Daily Mail, an independent um, sports website that isn't linked to a major publishing house, marker.com. British football's drug problem. 88 players return positive test samples. 15 are in the Premier League. They elaborate um, uh, on it's a Spanish website, and this is their English version of the Spanish website. It says 88 players have returned positive tests, 15 in the Premier League. Not one player has been banned. So this is interesting. Let's see what they say. 15 Premier League players failed drugs tests between 2015 and 2020, so the beginning of COVID, and faced no ban of any kind. The number could be higher. Of the 15, 12 returned positive results for performance enhancing substances, and one of those cases is still being investigated without any sanctions having been handed down. The Mail on Sunday have reported the figures. They also note as many as 88 footballers in Britain, so that includes Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, failed doping tests between 2013 and 2020. So that's 2 extra years. The cases that show use of performance-enhancing drugs included a positive for amphetamines and 3 for triamcinolone, the substance Bradley Wiggins used to treat hay fever. So that's an antihistamine, so a steroid. Ritalin and testosterone booster human chronic gonadotropin, HCG, were found in the Premier League cases, although there could be medical reasons for Ritalin for ADHD. So you have to bear that in mind, although Ritalin has been proven to actually be a performance enhancer as well because it aids concentration. And of course, the HCG used in cycling and MMA that helps with cardio and recovery. The UK Anti-Doping Agency (UKAD) explained that no sanctions were handed down due to an accidental ingestion or the player having a therapeutic TUE. So the therapeutic use exemptions, Ritalin, if you have got ADHD, you are allowed to be prescribed it. And someone who has actually got ADHD, if I was younger or decided to go down the medication route, I would probably be on Ritalin or something similar. So when you've got testosterone booster, if you've had cancer treatment, for example, there are players who have had cancer treatment, and therefore you have to be a little bit careful in the therapeutic use exemption, and that has been abused. You know that. Other positives, though, not necessarily from the Premier League, showed use of morphine, cannabis, cocaine, amongst other bad substances. So the period in question is 2013 to 2020. And we know that doping tests were affected due to COVID. Look, it's a grey area with some of these therapeutic use exemptions. In theory, I could, if I wanted to go down the medication route, be put on Adderall or Ritalin for my ADHD. And if I was, obviously a professional athlete, I would have to declare that as a medication for a health issue. I know of several sports stars who've had cancer treatment, and that's where the testosterone, other hormone balancing things help with recovery from cancer treatment and being able to return to compete. So that's where your therapeutic use exemptions come in. You could have asthmatics, hay fever sufferers, so antihistamines, which are technically classed as a steroid. However, they've obviously been abused in the past. And the Bradley Wiggins situation with his therapeutic use exemption obviously raises a lot of questions of, okay, hay fever, understandable. A lot of people suffer with hay fever. I know I do. But then there are those who have no health issues, such as Maria Sharapova using the heart medication to control her heart rate, for example, that is designed for people with irregular heartbeats. The fact is, as high as 88, and not a single player has been banned, and there's also, recreational drug use in there as well, is concerning. But because no bans have been handed down, and they put forward with the therapeutic use exemption, there's a lot of common ailments that do require long-term medication, and we have to be very, very careful saying, well, that player is definitely abusing the therapeutic use exemption. And of course, doctor-patient privilege. You can't really demand a person's medical records unless it is actually a court of law or an autopsy. So we have to be very, very careful about deliberately pointing the finger. I think the headline's a little bit misleading. It is a little bit misleading. But what is worrying to me is the recreational drug use, so cannabis, cocaine, amphetamines, MDMA, and tests have come back with those positive results. That's an automatic ban. You have to obviously contest with a B sample. And some of these excuses of I accidentally ingested it. I'm sorry, that doesn't fly with me. Some of the excuses are actually outlandish that belong in a fantasy novel. They are getting very creative with some of the excuses they use, but no bans have been handed down. So when we're trying to speculate, Sacco, he must be one of the 15 Premier League players. That's very dangerous. But looking at the numbers of professional players who are under the PFA umbrella, and then obviously in Scotland as well, and Wales and Northern Ireland, the amount of registered players in football in the professional and semi-professional leagues, that is a very small minority. That's a lot. That is 88 players over a 7-year period is not actually as many as you think. What is interesting is though is they don't look at samples post 2020, and there's a lot of reasons for that. UK anti-doping and World Anti-Doping have stated that there is a backlog and there has been a lack of testing. So there is a possibility that there are players who are deliberately cheating using steroids or performance enhancers that are not under the TUE exemptions for health reasons, who have been getting away with it for 2 years because of the lack of testing due to the pandemic and resources being put towards vaccine development. A lot of the biochemists who work at UK anti-doping, volunteered to work alongside the vaccine and the research behind the virus. They're scientists, they're sports scientists, but they're scientists who work with the human body. They were seconded or volunteered to work in vaccine development and research. So the UK Anti-Doping Authority had to give up some of its staff and facilities to aid with testing for the virus, and so there is a backlog and in testing samples. But it is a very interesting little snapshot over a 7-year period. It's it's troubling. It is troubling. Look, the James Maloney story, obviously in France, with a cocaine metabolite in his system, um, and that's his career over. We've seen obviously in rugby league circles, a lot of players and rugby union, a lot of players have positive tests for recreational drugs. Um, and face the consequences. Obviously, we've had the peptide scandal in Australia with the AFL and NRL as well. That raised question marks over A, player welfare, and B, who knew what, and what is actually appropriate to use as a supplement. So there's a lot of grey areas. Um, the Sacco I was talking about was the Liverpool one after the Champions League semi-final, and then he failed a test. It is interesting that he hasn't been featuring, but it does say in this report, in these articles, that not a single player has been banned. So that is interesting, but it's the time frame of 2013 to 2020. It's a very interesting time frame. The use of therapeutic use exemptions was highlighted with Bradley Wiggins in cycling and others in a variety of sports. Maria Sharapova in tennis. That is a hot topic about what therapy with the therapeutic use exemption. Chris Froome has fielded questions over his alleged such severe asthma that he needs a therapeutic use exemption. There's been question marks over Team Sky, now Team Ineos in professional cycling as well, and a load of questions fielded by individual athletes and teams in regards to player medication. The difficult area is it's patient doctor confidentiality. Unless there's some severe foul play here, and it doesn't specify that it's just one club or several clubs that seem to have it. Seems to be smattering across the board. The fact that cocaine, cannabis, and we can debate whether recreational drugs should be on the banned list or not, and the legality of recreational drug use, and it's not illegal to consume, but it's illegal to possess. That kind of grey area with the law, and there's growing pushes to decriminalise and completely legalise in various jurisdictions. I would say this: whilst it's on the ban list, just don't take it. It's quite simple. If you do need to go to a doctor, get that therapeutic use exemption, and if you have got an ailment, as I say, if you are a cancer sufferer and if you have anemia or if you have ADHD, you have to take medication to basically control your condition. And that's what those therapeutic use exemptions are for. Ritalin is used for ADHD. However, it can be used to aid improved concentration and performance in that sense. It is troubling. The fact that no bans have been handed down is also troubling as well. And questions will be asked of UK anti-doping, and questions will be asked of the FA, as they're the overreaching governing body of the sport in this country, and the Scottish FA and the Welsh FA and the FA of Northern Ireland. That questions will be asked of the governing bodies. Questions will be asked of UK anti-doping, quite rightly so. especially if there's recreational drug use fails. Now, whether they're out of season as well, there's mitigating circumstances. Jake Livermore, for example, got caught with cocaine, and of course his daughter had passed away quite tragically, and mental health comes into it. And he was playing at Hull City at the time, and his ban was reduced on appeal because of mitigating circumstance. It's still very troubling. So there's a lot of questions going to be aimed at UK anti-doping about their doping policies and then the use of therapeutic use exemptions. They've come up into the headlines a lot in recent years, and there's been a lot of question marks over athletes or sports teams abusing the therapeutic use exemptions as a rule. So there's a lot of discussion about TUEs and what conditions need to be treated, and a bit more transparency between athletes, their doctors, and the doping authorities. FA Cup. I think Palace might beat Chelsea today. I have a sneaky suspicion Crystal Palace might beat Chelsea today, and that then throws up a whole can of worms and throws predictions out. The way Man City played yesterday, I was really surprised. But Klopp was right to rotate those players against Benfica. It paid off. Their game management could be a little bit better. They let their foot off the gas in the second half. That's interesting. Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Man United, or Spurs. Who's more likely to win a quadruple first? Well, Liverpool are still in the hunt, obviously. It'll either be Liverpool or Manchester City. I would have thought could win multiple titles in the season, and Liverpool have the chance to win 4. City have got the chance to get a double. It's very hard to do that. I would say Liverpool, Manchester City, as things currently stand. Arsenal and Spurs and Man United. There are clearly issues within those clubs, and of course, the last club out of those three to win a trophy was Arsenal with the FA Cup with Mikel Arteta a couple of seasons ago. So, I would say Liverpool and City. Liverpool have a very good chance this season, and it's likely. Not certain, but it is likely. It obviously all depends on the Premier League. I think they've already won the League Cups. They've already got silverware this season, and Jurgen Klopp's got over the hoodoo of winning a final. It's their first FA Cup final in a decade, so that's a big milestone that he's ticked off. Since he's been at Liverpool, they have struggled in the FA Cup. This is the first season they finally got it all together under Jurgen Klopp in the Cup. So they have a really good chance this season. Whilst they're still in the hunt for 4 trophies, they are the most likely. I think Man City as well, depending on transfers in the summer and looking at what they do in the summer to strengthen that squad and freshen up that squad a little bit. They are obviously still in the hunt as well, but the other clubs are, I think, a bit too far back. Chelsea are obviously a big question mark about the uncertainty surrounding the ownership situation and squad situation with players. Arsenal, Spurs, and Man United are not even close. And I think Arsenal are the most likely to win a trophy out of those 3. They're not even close at the moment to the clubs above them. The doping failures, this could be anyone who played in the Premier League in that time frame retarded. So I think yes, absolutely. And obviously player transfers, players move around. If it's an ex-player, then what's the point in suspending them? But it raises question marks over, their legacy in the game, and question marks over their character, and that opens up another can of worms as well. It'll be interesting if an ex-player actually comes clean and says yes, they're cheating or recreational drug use is more widespread than what the testers catch. That will be quite troubling, but it does raise questions about UK anti-doping and why players who have tested positive, who don't have a therapeutic use exemption or have recreational drugs still in their system, why they weren't banned. It does raise a lot of questions aimed at UK anti-doping. Yes, the players are in the wrong for doing what they've done because the rules are clear, but it does raise a lot of questions at UK anti-doping, their policies, and yes, you've got to work on a case-by-case basis. And obviously, there are mitigating circumstances, but there are a lot of question marks that need to be answered. And the culture within sport as well, not just football, but the culture within sport, again, raises its ugly head. It is incredible that Liverpool could still win the quadruple. Absolutely, it's incredible. And if they were to do that, that would be something that in English football has never been done before. On paper, who's got the best squad in the top six and who's got the worst top six squad? Paper's one thing, actually putting it into practice, as I say, on paper's one thing, putting it into practice is something completely different because you may have all the best players, Real Madrid with the Galacticos era, and have really poor team chemistry. I would say Spurs and Arsenal are lacking a bit. I would say Man United have mismanaged their squad and some of their signings. And as I say, on paper, some brilliant players. In practice, it's not working. Uh, I would say the top three in Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City have got the best squads. So Chelsea have got some uncertainty. But as I say, it's all well and good having these really good, good squad depth, good talent. But if you can't get them to work together as a team, and if there's, the squad chemistry isn't right, the combinations don't quite work as intended, the tactics may not suit the players that you have, which is, I think, a Man United problem. It then Liverpool's style of play suits their squad. If some of those players were at Man City or another club in the Premier League, would they be as effective? That's an open-ended question. Um, the tactics suit Man City with the squad they've got. If some of those players were at another club, would that suit their style of play? So I would say the top three clubs have got the best squads that suit their style of play. The next three, they may have on paper, world class players and great talent, but it's obviously not working for them. So there you go. Out of Juventus, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern, or PSG, was the best position in the minute and the worst position? I would say Bayern Munich are in the best position. PSG is just a team of mercenary players that have a poor team culture because they're spending all this money on wages and transfers, and while they dominate the French league, they can't do anything in Europe. And again, it comes down to team chemistry. There's a lot of big egos there, and I think it's the I would say Bayern because they're just so consistent, and there's some good talent in the German league. There's some good clubs in Germany, and they're just so consistent. There have been some cracks appearing in recent years. They haven't dominated all the domestic competitions in Germany as much as they would like. The Bundesliga, obviously, but German Cup, they haven't been dominating. There's been some weaknesses there. They've had some shock exits from the German Cup at the early stages. So there are a few cracks appearing in Bayern Munich. I don't think they're going to win constantly. There will come a point where some of the other German clubs start getting success again and investing in their squads a little bit more and closing that gap further. So while they're in a very solid position right now, that's not guaranteed to remain that way. Real Madrid and Barcelona got obviously their money issues, and Juventus their money issues off the field. And Juventus are under investigation, some creative accounting as well. I would say with Barcelona's money problems, Real Madrid's money problems, and Juventus with their off-field issues as well. If they cannot get compliant with the new UEFA rules, they're going to get some punishments. And I think UEFA are going to be quite strong following the European Super League. I can't see UEFA being seen to be weak in this case because for so long these clubs have forced UEFA's hand when it comes to policy, and I think UEFA's starting to bite back. Why do I think Real Madrid, Bayern, Barcelona, and PSG are doing fine, but Juve are struggling a lot? PSG aren't doing fine, really, because their league is less competitive because they basically bought it for a generation. They can't do anything in the Champions League. Barcelona, Bayern, Real Madrid, they're not. Bayern, I think, are in the best, healthiest position. Real Madrid and Barcelona, look at their money issues, and out of the top 10 paid players, all of them per week. All of them are in the Spanish league. So, Barcelona and Real Madrid have got massive issues with their wage bills, which are crippling the clubs, really, and damaging the image of the clubs. And their business model has to change because long term, it's with the new UEFA rules, they're going to cop some serious punishment. So look for them to try and offload talent in the summer and try and cut their wage bill somehow. Juve, Italian football's like this, where a team will be the dominant team for a period of time. For the most part, Juve, I think they've come back down to earth. I think there has been some squad mismanagement. There's been mismanagement off the field. Um, the other Italian clubs are suddenly becoming more competitive again. The Italian league has become a bit more competitive again. This is a league that's trying to recover from the 2006 match fixing scandal, and it's taken 14, 15, 16 years to get that recovery going, which is obviously impacted the national side as well, quite heavily. So Juve having a down couple of seasons is ironically, I think, good for Italian football. It makes the league more competitive. But think of Juve like Man United in the beginning of the Premier League era. You know, uh, they've now come back down to earth. Juventus has got the same issues as Man United. Very, very profitable club, well supported club with with the biggest fan base in Italian football, and it's more of a commercial than a footballing club these days. And I think it has the same structural issues that Manchester United have, and other clubs have adapted to the style of play changes, and how football's evolved with the different styles of play that they're using. The developing players, seeking finding talent, and being very shrewd in the transfer market. And Juventus have overpaid for players on contracts and transfers for a long time, and then they're feeling the effects of that, similar to Man United in England, similar to Barcelona and Real Madrid with their problems financially in Spain. Um, their era of dominance is at an end for now. It's not to say that down the line they won't be successful again, but success is cyclical. Serie A should have never relegated Juve, ruined Italian football. Look what happened with the Italian national team, Italian league. No, I think that the sanctions were fair. They were fair, and if you actually look at the Italian match fixing scandal in depth and actually look at how widespread it and how the clubs involved, I think the punishment was appropriate. It sent out a very strong message. Um, Fans, were frustrated with the direction the game was taking, and were voicing themselves very loudly in Italy. The Italian sports media felt it was justified, because it damaged the image of their league domestically and overseas. It's the national sport, but the image of the sport was massively impacted, and it, it, it and I still think now Italian football is still trying to come to terms and clean up its act. It still has the same issues. It doesn't matter if it's Juventus, AC Milan, whoever the club is, but um, when you're paying off referees to get favourable treatment and you're fixing matches, you deserve to be punished. Quite frankly, if Rangers was to win the Europa League, do you think people will take Scottish football seriously? Um, I think what's harmed Scottish football in recent decades is the UEFA coefficient. I think that's definitely had an impact. Um, I don't like the UEFA coefficient. I think that does harm those slightly smaller leagues financially, like the Scottish League, going forward with investment. I think some of the TV rights for the European game, continent wide, are heavily skewed for the so-called Big Five leagues. I think that's the modern era. The way the TV rights, the reformatting of the Champions League, the reformatting of the UEFA Cup to the Europa League, dropping the Cup Winners' Cup, which Aberdeen had some good success in back in the 80s under Alex Ferguson, has damaged the growth of the game and the finances north of the border. But Van Bronckhorst is a good young coach. Gerrard did good things as well, transforming the fortunes of that club in Scotland. And yes, it's a less competitive league because only two other teams since the 70s have won the title other than Celtic or Rangers, and that is a problem. That is a massive problem so it's not as competitive. But the UEFA coefficient and the lack of money north of the border hampers that. I think St Johnstone winning the cup double last season was a shot in the arm for Scottish football. Steve Clarke getting the team to the Euros was a shot in the arm. So I think there needs to be a little bit more, attention paid to what's happening north of the border. I think Celtic have had a bounce back season, and Rangers are continuing to compete for trophies, considering their financial problems that they had a decade or so ago. That is important. But there needs to be investment in other clubs. There needs to be more attention paid to Scottish football. But Scottish football's got more issues than just a smaller league and such. There are far more bigger issues at play with Scottish football. There is a lot of structural problems. The TV deal isn't great, and the UEFA coefficient I think hurts leagues like the Scottish League and then the Scandinavian leagues and some of the other leagues in Europe. It does hurt it. This season as well, Premier League dominates Serie A head to head. Yeah, you could argue that. You could argue the Italian sides in Europe haven't been as good as the last couple of seasons. And you could say it's an adaptation to the COVID situation, better squad rotation. A whole number of issues could contribute to the results that have happened in Europe this season. But next season may be completely different. It's like Spanish dominance for the best part of a decade in Europe has come to an end, and so it's all very cyclical. The 90s, look at what AC Milan did in the Champions League in the 90s and the 2000s. They were a dominant force. So it is very cyclical, so-called European dominance. Very, very cyclical. And it's all about how clubs are run, squad management, recruitment, player development, a whole host of things, and the style of football as well. With the way that football keeps evolving, and certain styles seem to be the fashionable style to go with tactically, and so it's very interesting. But yeah, just because this season English clubs have been dominant over Italian clubs, next season may be a different case. So it's all you would have to look at a much longer time frame to go. Okay, that's where there's more dominance. To do one season snapshot is a little bit of a shorter time frame to do a correlation or a statistical study. So we'll have to see what happens next season, and if it's similar in the knockout stages or in the group stages, then okay, then you could say Italian football was in a little bit of a downswing at the moment. I think the Super League will. Oh yes, the ESL. I think the clubs would be very, very stupid to attempt that. With the new UEFA spending rules coming in, and with the amount of debts that clubs have, I think the clubs have shot their bolt with that one. I think the fan reaction told you all you need to know. When it was first on the table, when they were first discussing it, a lot of younger fans were sort of in favour of it. But as time went on, and COVID had a second or third wave, and certain things came out about it, and then the structures of it, fans turned against it, and then you saw the response this time last year. I think the clubs would be exceptionally stupid to try again. They've sort of got the concessions, as the club owners have got the concessions they want from UEFA. Whether fans are happy with that, which they're not, with the new format of the Champions League. I mean, there are better ways to govern and fixture European club football. I'm a bit of an idealist when it comes to that. Go back to straight knockouts, get rid of the group stage. That means more teams more leagues get represented in the Champions League, Europa League, and bring back a Cup Winners' Cup instead of the Conference League. And you would see more. Ironically, if the Conference League was the Cup Winners' Cup, Leicester would have been in that competition anyway. So that's an irony of that one. It really is, because they won the FA Cup last year. But growing up, I remember the Champions League, the UEFA Cup, and the Cup Winners' Cup being straight knockouts until 1997. Then the Champions League, the group stage is brought in. The Cup Winners' Cup gets scrapped after 1999 because they reformatted the qualification criteria for the UEFA Cup, and the UEFA Cup gets rebranded as the Europa League. The Champions League has a few more tweaks to if you finish third in your group, you drop down to the Europa League, and the Europa League brings group stages in. And the UEFA coefficient continues to penalise those smaller leagues or those leagues outside the top five in Europe. It's a penalising coefficient. It's not right. Scrap it. So there's my views on qualification criteria for Europe. I say go back to straight knockouts. More leagues get representation in the Champions League. More leagues get representation in the Europa League. More leagues get representation in what should be the Cup Winners' Cup, not the Conference League. That's how I would go with it. I'd have stuck with the format pre 1997. UEFA decided to give in to these big clubs to avoid a European Super League breakaway and to get more money from the TV and more money from the fans. It's all about money. Remember that. It's all about money. And as time has gone on, fans have got more and more frustrated with the direction European club football is taking. And there is a lot of anger across Europe aimed at UEFA, at least on the club side of things. The tournament side of things, when it comes to the Euros and the World Cups, fans are okay with that. The club game, however, fans are pretty negative in their response to UEFA Europe-wide. Would Juventus get top four in the Premier League and would Manchester United win Serie A? That's an interesting. Again, that's a hypothetical. If we're talking about Serie A back in the 90s and the Premier League back in the 90s, that's a very even contest. I honestly believe. I think Italian football's gone in the doldrums for a good 10, 15 years following on from the match fixing scandal. And therefore is rebuilding its confidence in itself. Would Juventus make top four? I don't know. I don't know if Manchester United will win Serie A either with their lack of consistency. You've got to be so consistent to win any league, and if the way both sides are playing, I reckon both will finish outside the top four in their domestic leagues, let alone in each other's leagues. What are Canada's chances in the World Cup in the Qatar? I think, ironically, because it's been played in winter, I think Canada could get out the group stage and get into the knockout stages. I think Canada have very good chances of progressing quite far in the tournament because of the time of the year the tournament's been played in. Not necessarily, and the way they've been playing and then their style of play is refreshing. There's a no quit attitude. I think the Canadians will do quite well. I think Canada will surprise a lot of people and progress from the group stages. I honestly believe that because of the time of year the tournament's been played and a lot of the Canadian players play in the MLS. So I think that's actually a benefit to the Canadian players because for them it's their off season. So that they will be used to that kind of timing with international games and international breaks and qualifiers and tournament games they would normally play. I think it suits Canada because it works well with the MLS league structure being in the off season. I think the Canadians that's an advantage to those leagues and those nations. Like the African nations, I think could do quite well as this as well. I think with the African Cup of Nations being played at the same time of year in midwinter, the Northern Hemisphere, I think the African nations, and I think Canada and a few other nations could do quite well in this World Cup. And some surprises. I think Canada can get out the group, and I think they can make the knockout rounds. How far they get, I don't know, but I think they have the odds are in their favour to do that. And because not a lot of countries would have played against Canada internationally, not seen them at international level for scouting, I think they could throw up a few surprises for some of the more established nations because they're not regular tournament finalists as well. I think they're going to throw some surprises out there. They're going to catch some teams out. They beat in Mexico. They finished above Mexico and the US in the qualification. They topped their qualifying group. Ahead of Costa Rica and some Central American countries as well. They're dangerous. Do not underestimate them at all. Who's better, Juve or Man United? Neither. I think they're about the same at the moment. Both are clubs in transition. Both have got a lot of off-field issues. I would say they're about the same. I would say they're in about a similar position. I wouldn't say either's better than the other. I would say they're roughly the same in where they're at on and off the field. I think that's roughly where Juve and Man United are roughly at right now. Having not watched a lot of Italian football in recent years, however, it's very hard for me to say how Juve are actually doing on the field and off the field. But from the reports that are coming out and their league position, I would say they're roughly in the same position at the moment. Uh, living off past glories, squads in transition, um, squad balance not quite right. That's what I would suggest is where they're at. Um, that's not to say that they're terrible sides. I mean, on paper they should be doing a lot better than they are. But again, it's getting that dressing room to be positive and work together. It's all well and good having all these players on paper. If they can't get a good working relationship, good team chemistry, then it defeats the object. You can spend as much money as you want, and you can't win anything. Liverpool would beat Juve 2-0 both games. Juventus are better defensively than Man United. Juve don't have an attacking threat apart from Bahajovic and Chiesa, but he's injured. Again, it's style of play and whether the players are buying into the coach's style of play and whether it suits their attributes. You want to have a style of play that actually suits your players' strengths rather than highlights their weaknesses. And what's the philosophy? What's the direction the club wants to take? What style do they want? What formations are the preferred formation? Have the players bought into the style of play? Have they bought into the coach's tactics? Chiesa was brilliant in the Euros. His work rate, his work ethic, his combinations with other players, his relationship with other players who actually play at different clubs. He listened to the instructions. He played a few different roles in a few different positions. Chiesa is a very, very good player, and I can see a Premier League or one of the other big clubs in Europe looking at him and trying to get his signature because of the style of football he plays and the adaptability that he has. Looking at how he played in the Euros, you've got to harness that. And there's a little bit of raw talent to him, but harness it and you get the best all-round attacking player. Vlahovic, I've heard some big raps on him. But again, if you're limiting your attacking output to a handful of players to drag the team along, you need creative players in the midfield. You need roving defenders who will go on those long, lung-busting runs to drive you forward. You need a balanced side, and if you don't have that, then you are going to ultimately struggle to win games or play in a positive manner. And the most entertaining or the best football teams are those that have a balanced side where there are threats in multiple places on the field. They're not relying on one player to create. They're not relying on one player to score all the goals. There are multiple threats on the field. There's scoring depth. There's positional depth where if a player is injured or not fully fit, or you want to rotate the squad, another player can slot in and do the same role, if not a slightly similar role. You need to have that energy box-to-box midfielder who's a little bit more defensively minded. You need to have that box-to-box midfielder that's got a bit of creativity, who then makes space for the real creative attacking midfielders. If you don't have that squad balance and that transition play between defence and attack in the middle third of the field, you generally don't have a lot of success. The best teams have that transitional play nailed down. The most consistently good teams, you may have like a team that wins a one-off title playing counter-attack or strangulation defence style who will score one or two goals. Low scoring teams can win titles because they're very defensively sound. But long-term success, being competitive for a long period of time, you need to have that transition game in the middle third of the field and good depth in that middle third of the field. You need to have depth scoring. Teams without depth scoring struggle. So you need to have a very flexible kind of squad. And if you don't have that, you are generally done. Liverpool or AC Milan, who's better? Liverpool have won more. I think Liverpool have won more titles as a whole. They've got more silverware as a whole, more league titles. AC Milan, Liverpool in the Champions League. I mean, that's just the stuff of dreams, isn't it? Really, the European success that both clubs have had, and the players who play for both clubs, the dominant spells they've had, the players, world-class players have played for these clubs throughout their existence. Right now, I think Liverpool are slightly edging it, but AC Milan are in a similar title battle with Inter, which is, I think, good for the Italian league as well. So both clubs are in a similar title race with big, league rivals. and local rivals, which is, I think, adds something. And both clubs are in a similar position in their league form and battling for titles. I think Liverpool getting over that that Premier League lack of title a couple of years ago, actually winning the Premier League for the first time, I think has changed the direction of the club going forwards. Um, 30 years with no league title is something that I think Liverpool fans just, was it a curse? Getting that first Premier League title, I think, has given a rejuvenation to the club, and now that Jurgen Klopp's won his first two cup finals as well, because his cup final history record in cup finals was terrible. I think it's given further rejuvenation to the club, and they're fighting for a quadruple. Whether they get it or not, it's highly unlikely. They might get a cup treble, for example. They might win the Champions League, FA Cup, and League Cup. Cup treble is nothing to be sniffed at. Um, and there's a reason why Jurgen Klopp is now currently the longest serving Premier League manager, since obviously with Sean Dyche losing his job at the beginning of the weekend. There's a reason why Klopp is now the longest serving Premier League manager, and that stability is paying off now. It took a while to get the squad where he wanted it and get the squad successful. But yeah, I can't see Klopp going anywhere anytime soon. I can't see the club wanting to change direction. The only way I can see Klopp leaving Man United is Liverpool. Sorry, Man United. What am I saying? The only way I can see Klopp leaving Liverpool is if Germany have a poor World Cup, um, and the German FA comes calling and say, "Do you want to manage the national side?" That's the only way I can see Klopp leaving any time in the next few years. Is if Germany fail at the World Cup, struggle at the World Cup like they did at the Euros and the last World Cup, and continue to struggle in tournaments. Yeah, that's the only way I can see Klopp leaving Liverpool right now is if the German FA were like, "We've got a job offer for you on a 4-year deal, next Euros, next World Cup." That's the only way I could see Klopp leaving Liverpool, is the German national side came along. I can't see Liverpool wanting to get rid of him as manager, and I can't see Klopp wanting to move on as of yet. And it's the same with Pep Guardiola at Man City to a certain extent, although he's been a bit more vague about his next managerial ambitions. I mean, he has taken a year out of management in the past. Um, and what is interesting is Guardiola's already every time has stepped into an already successful team that has already won silverware, and he's already slotting into a successful setup. And the only way I can see Guardiola moving on from City is if another big club in Europe is looking for a manager, and or if a national side of any country is looking for a manager, most likely the US, I would have thought, because they're willing to spend the money. Who is your top biggest clubs for me? It's got to be Real Madrid, Barcelona, Liverpool, Man United, Juventus, Bayern Munich, AC Milan, Chelsea, Dortmund, Ajax. That's a difficult one. If we're going by trophies won, the list is different. If we're going by global fan base and wealth, that's again a different list. If we're going by, times qualified for the Champions League um, and the old European Cup, and then European success with European silverware, that's again a different list again. Because there's teams not on that list who've won European trophies, so I think have got a bit more history than some of the clubs on there. Because I will take into consideration the UEFA Cup and the Cup Winners' Cup as historical European competitions that clubs have won in their trophy cabinet. That is a very, very difficult one. If we're talking about wealthy owners, some of those clubs aren't on that list. Global reach, the global impact, um, the value of the clubs, what the clubs are valued at, and that's not taking into consideration the debts the clubs have. There's a lot of unanswered questions with that one. That is subjective. Um, there are ways to be more factual, a bit more breaking it down by revenues earned, club values, major trophies won. So actual success with silverware. You'll find Rangers suddenly come on that list for the most successful club for major silverware one because of domestic silverware, and that then changes the list. So it is subjective, very very subjective, but there are top 10 lists for most silverware, most Champions League, finals appearances, most European trophies won, value, season ticket holders, average capacity of stadium filled per game, a whole number of analytical things you can break down the biggest clubs, global revenue, brand value, a whole host of things to say these are the big clubs. Um, so that is a subjective list, and everyone's list is subjective, and that's fair. No one's going to agree on a top 10 list. You will always have disagreements saying, "Oh, that club. Why have you not got this club on the list? Why is that club on the list?" So for me, it's a subjective list. But some of those clubs that you've named weren't part of the European Super League, so that is interesting in itself. The fact that AC Milan is as low as it is, but Inter isn't up there, for example, with the success they've had in Europe and the success they've had in Serie A. I mean, there are, okay, and then you would look at number of major trophies won. Do you take that into consideration? Because then that changes the list again. Um, and until the Abramovich era, Chelsea wouldn't be on that list, not by a long shot. They'll be nowhere close to the top 10. So if that's all time or right now, again, it's subjective. What markers are you using? This is where you're going to get that debate, and everyone's top 10 list is different. You could put down the top 10 most underrated clubs in European football. And that becomes a very interesting list of people who think, oh, these clubs deserve more recognition. Look at the amount of major trophies these clubs have won. Look at the success these clubs have had. And that's why when I did my history videos on some of the clubs in Germany, Borussia Mönchengladbach, I was really stunned by the amount of trophies they won in the 70s in Europe. They were a very dominant side, and they won a lot of trophies in Europe, the UEFA Cups and Cup Winners' Cups. They were very, very dominant over the 70s period, and more dominant than Bayern, actually. They won more trophies than Bayern Munich. And obviously in recent years, they haven't been winning silverware, but in the 70s, they won silverware on a regular basis. I'm using trophies, but Champions League means more than Premier League a bit more. Yeah, if you were to break down each of the top 5 leagues for silverware, and trophies won, and including European success, I could do that actually. And you would find the list is significantly different. And I should do more club history videos, because the Eintracht Frankfurt one was brilliant, because they have won major silverware. They've gone lengthy periods without winning, and then you look at how few major honours they have, and it is frustrating that there's a reason why they're in the Europa League semi-finals. They're an underrated German club, but Borussia Mönchengladbach, just look at the history video I did on them. I was really surprised by their success in the 70s. I was stunned, quite frankly, of their success in the 70s and how many trophies they won. They had a very, very good side. A lot of the German national side came from Borussia Mönchengladbach at the time, the national side, and I was really stunned by how successful they were in the 70s and 80s. I was left completely gobsmacked. I didn't realise, and for those older fans of football, they were like, no, that's true. They were a very dominant German side. And then you have, obviously the Arsenal Invincibles era. Arsenal won three FA Cups since being at the Emirates, but the success for Arsenal was more when they were at Highbury. Leagues and League Cups and FA Cups. The Highbury Wenger era is, fans have fond memories, and I remember that Arsenal side between '97 and 2004 being one of that period of Arsenal. It's amazing that was they moved to the Emirates 16 years ago, and how things have changed since they've been at the new stadium. The lack of success for some clubs with the lack of trophies won is astounding. I was really looking at Leicester City. I'm very tempted to do a history of Leicester City Football Club and look at the trophies they've won, because they have a very good record in the League Cup. And, they dominated that competition for a while, and but their failure in the FA Cup with the most FA Cup final losses before winning an FA Cup is a record that they've had the most appearances in the FA Cup without winning it in the final until they won last year. Um, you know, that's another strange, strange little historical tidbit. I mean, Oxford United have won a League Cup. People forget that. There are some clubs that have got some really hidden success in the modern era, or what I call post 1945, as in the modern era, post World War II, and then 1960 onwards with the European Cup and the UEFA competitions coming along, and the Cup Winners' Cup, and the European Cup, now the Champions League. The modern era, as in Sky TV, the 90s onwards, or the actual modern era from 1960 onwards, you look at, there are some clubs that have definitely deserved more attention for what they've done in the game. And I'm more than happy to look at, the history of Napoli, or the history of some of these other clubs that have won silverware that haven't won silverware for a while, or go under the radar because they don't win as regularly as they used to. There's a lot of clubs that have had a bit more. I mean, Liverpool, yeah, they have won more trophies than Man United. It's a fact. Um, League titles versus trophies in general, they've won more. But they're not close to Rangers when it comes to domestic trophies won. Rangers are still the most successful club domestically for major trophies won. So when we're talking about, oh yeah, this club is bigger than this, I look at Real Madrid and Barcelona. They've actually won less trophies than Rangers for major honours, and people are like, but it's Scottish football, no one cares. Still, they've still got all these silverware. You've still got to beat what's in front of you on every season, and so Rangers, have got the most silverware for any club domestically. Liverpool play in England, so we've got that Liverpool get more champions. Yeah, that's to do with, again, as I say, the UEFA coefficient and the restructuring of qualification requirements for the Champions League and Europa League and Conference League, and that's why I would scrap the coefficient, and I would restructure it to straight knockouts. I think that has harmed some of the lesser leagues in Europe. I want to say lesser leagues; they're not lesser leagues, because if you look before the coefficients brought in and before the group stage of the Champions League are brought in the 90s, look at the clubs who've actually won the European Cup. You'll be stunned where they come from. I honestly believe the UEFA coefficient and the structures with group stages and the way qualification protocols to get into these European Cup competitions has actually damaged the club game in Europe, and has devalued leagues. Leagues have been devalued. Domestic trophies have been devalued in the last 20 or so years because of the way the club game is governed by UEFA and the UEFA coefficient, which I think it has a negative bias against certain leagues, and of course the big five, so the French league, the German league, the Italian, the Spanish, and the English league, gets favourable bias for qualification protocols for Europe. And of course Scotland play in Scotland because they're Scottish. But that, I think, is heavily frustrating, especially if you're a fan of a club like in Poland or the Czech Republic, or Greece or Turkey or Sweden, Denmark. Your league, which is just as competitive at league level and then just as well supported by the local fan base, is hampered in regards to European qualification because of the UEFA coefficient. The Dutch league has been hampered by it in recent years and been devalued, which is partly one of the reasons why Ajax has been dominating for the best part of a decade. Is the UEFA coefficient damages, getting into that holy grail of the Champions League or Europa League for finance. And your best players want to leave that league and go to the bigger leagues in further west. So there's definitely an issue with the UEFA coefficient. There's definitely an issue with how the Champions League is structured, the Europa League is structured, the Conference League is structured. I still want to call it the UEFA Cup. I'm that old. So there's definitely issues with the structures within it. I understand Alexander Fair. This is where I believe Serafin is the right guy to take UEFA forward in that regard, because he wants to reform. he then goes, "We have to reform. We're going to give it over to the Brains Trust." UEFA obviously has, people working out how to structure competitions and what benefits UEFA other clubs. They've come up with this new UEFA Champions League format, which I don't like. However, I do believe that Serafin is the right guy to take UEFA forward. How they're reforming, we'll have to see how it all plays out, and whether fans warm to the idea, or whether there is actually backlash against the proposal, the proposed restructuring of the Champions League. And fan involvement is key. Fans have already said we're not happy with the structure that you're putting forward for the restructuring of the Champions League for the next TV deal. We're not happy with it. And I think UEFA are paying attention to that, because there's been a lot of negative headlines for a long time when it comes to football governance. And I look at the World Cup, look at various issues that FIFA, UEFA, and other governing bodies have faced in the last 5-10 years, and the negative headlines that have come out, and the damage I think that they have done for the sport, and how fans feel that the governance side of it has let the sport down for so long. You look at the failure of financial fair play and how it's weakly enforced. The direct, fit and proper, the directors test, the fit and proper persons test in English football, for example, being weakly enforced. The profit over loss rule, so the 135% loss over profit rule, if that was properly enforced, it would be embarrassing for the league, because if they were to properly enforce it, Premier League, Championship, League One, and League Two, I think 60 or 70 clubs would be docked points and fined, and you can't have that, because that makes things look bad. So they're cherry picking the clubs they're going to punish, and that's no way to govern a game. And then if you're like a Man City and you've got enough money behind you, you can just appeal it and make the problem go away. So there's already a frustration at FIFA, and then UEFA, and then the FA, the governing bodies, with the direction the sport is taking. The FA Cup's in final yesterday, where there was no transport into North London, and issues with London transport on the underground. Man City didn't sell out their allocation of tickets, whereas Liverpool did for some reason. And I've seen some shitty jokes on social media, which I think are a little bit, okay, the banter's banter, but this is like, change the joke. It's dull. Man City, I think, had 5 or 10,000 tickets unsold, and couldn't fill their allocation, and so they hid their empty seats with a big banner. And there's multiple reasons for that. And then you've got the social media banner, but please change the jokes. Empty Etihad, you can't sell out your own home stadium. Come up with something new. But both clubs have put in petitions to the FA to get that fixture moved to a neutral ground in the Midlands or the north of England. The FA rejected that out of hand. They've had 3 years. Network Rail informed them 3 years ago that the weekend they wanted to play this FA Cup semi-final, we're going to be doing engineering work. This weekend, if you have a match at Wembley with the semi-final of the FA Cup, this is pre-COVID, we are going to be doing maintenance work outside of Euston Station. This is pre-planned. This is a long-term infrastructure project. This is going to prove a problem. The FA had 3 years of planning, and as things have proven since COVID, sports organisations have proved they can move things like that in days and reschedule stuff. So for the FA to go, no, we're not moving it, that is not good enough for me. They're getting criticised. I know there is, TV contracts and security contracts in place. However, logic should dictate over greed, and the FA went with greed. The two biggest clubs is Real Madrid and Barcelona in the world. No one can say Liverpool or Man United, if I'm being honest. Barcelona have predicted that losing Messi has cost them 250, anywhere between 140 to 250 million lost in merchandise sales for this year. Up to $250 million lost in merchandise sales globally, because he's no longer part of the club. That just tells you how badly structured their business model was. Just, he is the guy. We're going to sell all the merchandise because of this guy, rather than building a team of superstars who could work together. As they slowly retired or got sold on and moved on, it became the Messi show. and his brand was linked to the club's brand rather than the club being linked to his brand, that kind of thing. He threw the toys out the pram over not being off the contract he wanted. Then there was, I want to leave on a free. Oh no, we're going to, you can't, even though the contract was in his favour. So there's possibly breach of employment law there. He goes and they lose that much in merchandise sales. And then suddenly out of nowhere, oh, we're 1.3 billion in debt. So if in your opinion, the biggest clubs in the world are the two most bankrupt clubs in the world with moral and financial bankruptcy, by all means, I have no sympathy for Real Madrid and Barcelona. I've got no sympathy for the toxic nature of those clubs and what's come out about the toxic culture within those clubs, boardrooms, and behind the scenes structures. Um, I'm glad they're struggling. It's the time for football to wake up and go. If your most profitable brands, your biggest global selling points, are so toxically and badly run, and think they're above the rules of the game and above the community aspect of the game, then I'm glad they're struggling. I'm glad they're in financial turmoil because it's the kick up the arse football needs to go. Wake up! This is unacceptable. How this has been allowed to manifest itself over so long. The most toxic guy still leave football. Really, if Messi wants to leave Barcelona, when he said a few years earlier, "I want to retire at Barcelona," I think that says something. I think that actually says something, and that's my personal opinion. If a club legend like Messi goes, you know what, I don't want to retire anymore, I want to leave. That tells you that something's gone horribly wrong within the culture and the structures and the attitudes of the club. Um, Players don't want to play there anymore. Players go to Real Madrid to destroy their careers, it seems, and there's a whole list of players who've gone on and had brilliant careers elsewhere who damaged their reputations playing at Real Madrid. Barcelona, you've got to win La Liga every year, otherwise you're sacked as a manager. You can have as much European success as you want, but their success in Europe is now dried up again, and it's a managerial graveyard. The cultures and the toxic nature of those clubs has been exposed in the last couple of years, and I think that image of greatest clubs in the world has rubbed off, um, in my opinion. I honestly think there are better club cultures out there, and more. How do I put it? Would you rather play at a club where there's less media speculation about your private life, where you can just go about your daily business, and fans come up to you in the street, go, well done, keep doing what you're doing, or do you want to be at a club where the fan base, if you have that one or two bad games, they're lobbing missiles at your car, they're giving you death threats? I think I know what I would want to play, and it's not all about the money. A lot of players have gone there for the big wages. Then they can't justify those wages, and the fan bases of both clubs are toxic as hell. From what I've seen, they have got very vile fan bases, that again make you question why players will go there if they've got to put up with. I mean, look what happened to Luis Figo when he was playing in Spain. I mean, the crap he got from fans of both clubs, the vile abuse he had to suffer. I wouldn't do that. Most top players play for Liverpool, Man City now, to be fair. But yeah, Mbappe and Haaland want to join Real Madrid and Barcelona. They can have fun actually ruining their careers then and their reputations, because where's Barcelona going to justify the transfer fees and their wages when they're bankrupt? If a club has got 1.3 billion in debt, how can they then justify, offering Mbappe or whatever 800 grand a week when they've got this massive debt that if that was any other club, they failed. Um, and they're obsessed with this European Super League that no one else wants, which has failed. And what's come out about how the smear campaigns they've had against people and the toxic attitudes and the interference from club presidents and the nastiness, the vile nature of it. For me, as nothing. I I am so glad that football is no longer my favourite sport. I know we've discussed it a lot, but I'm so glad that football is not my favourite sport anymore. I have fallen out of love with the sport over the years. And as each year passes, I love it less and less. Um, with the more negative headlines the sport has, the less I love the sport. It's sad. It's a sad state of affairs when that is the case. When um, as a fan, uh, I feel the way I do. There is for me. Liverpool get a better fan base than the two Spanish clubs yet again, but Man United fan base is nasty. They booed Pogba yesterday and told them. The Liverpool fan base has a toxic element. Let's not dismiss that. I have been to Anfield. I have seen the toxic element in full effect. Sadly, every club has that toxic element. Um, in regards to booing your own players, yeah, some players don't help themselves. I think Pogba, he wants to have a contract extension and a pay rise. Most fans want him gone. Um, there's a reason why Ferguson sold him to Juventus cheap when he was manager. He noticed the deficiencies in his game that he wasn't willing to work on as a younger player. Um, Ferguson retires, and then Pogba comes back to the club. That one for me was a, and they spent stupid amount of money to bring him back. Um, let him go. Let him go to um, because how he's won a World Cup and played in a Euros final, Pogba, I have no idea because he's so on his day he's brilliant. On his day he's absolutely brilliant. As I say, doing what he does. However, this is the frustrating thing. He's more obsessed with his Instagram and his Twitter and his Facebook, his social media content than actually doing his job. And that's a bit rich for me being on YouTube and discussing it. But I have a full time job and I focus on my job, and this is a hobby. Um, I do this on my days off, and I'm not paid as much as he is. Let's just be honest. What he earns in a week would take me 12 to 14 years to earn before tax. What he earns weekly would take me over a decade to earn. So, you know, let that sink in and work that one out. That's where I feel that player wages definitely need reining in. Let him go to a club that's bankrupt, or let him go to a club that's corrupt, or let him go to PSG where there's blood money. I don't care. Um, 20 years ago, he's already out of the Premier League. He's bye bye. Goes to the Galacticos. He would have been at Real Madrid and in a toxic club then. It's a toxic club now. Um, I think the issue is, this is where I'm Nemanja Matic saying I'm leaving at the end of the season. I'm not re-signing. I'm done. I think there's going to be a mass exodus of players. Um, Van der Beek going to Everton in January. There's already, I think, yeah, it's the mass exodus of players who are committed to the cause and want to develop if they're young, or senior players who are committed to putting effort in. If they're the ones going, I've had enough of this clown show. I'm out. I think Thiago. I think while he's not necessarily he plays a different role. We can admit that. Yesterday he was outstanding. He won the midfield for Liverpool, so they could basically win the game by half time. And even after half time, when okay, it's 3-1, he was still battling in that midfield right till he was subbed off. Pogba, he's like a rich man's Mesut Ozil because he's on more money. On his day, absolutely brilliant, one of the best players in the world, but too often does go missing. Now, there's multiple reasons why players are inconsistent. It's very hard to put in, a performance week in, week out. You will be playing with little niggles. You will be playing with issues off the field, and it is very very difficult to maintain every game. But too often he doesn't have the positive impact on the game, and his mentality isn't in the right place. There is no doubt on his skill and his ability, no doubt whatsoever in that he's one of the most capable, able players on his day that I have seen. His passing game when he's on form, and bringing other players in, and his ability on the ball is not questionable. You know, it's the mentality and the effort that is questionable. Skill alone does not make you a good player. It's effort, it's teamwork, it's personality, commitment, and too often he just tunes out. He's not committed to challenges. He's not committed to tracking back, and he has deficiencies in his game. He's not the best defensively. He's not the best at tracking back. Yeah, managers like Mourinho, managers like Solskjaer, put him in defensive positions where he shouldn't be. Um, but that Mourinho brought him back to the club, and that relationship soured very, very quickly. Very quickly. But I do believe there is dressing room unrest. Uh, the club is lacking direction and a way forward. Um, and the situation around Harry Maguire, I feel sorry for Harry Maguire. I do. Uh, he's not having a great season. Uh, there is no doubt on that. When Southgate, why are you booing our players? It's partly because they don't feel that he belongs in an England shirt right now. He's not proving it week in, week out. There are players who are busting a gut who are getting overlooked because of Southgate's favouritism. And Gareth Southgate is dividing the England fan base. But the battery that Harry Maguire is taking on social media and in the mainstream media, the battering he is taking is going to be having an effect on his confidence, um, his friends, his family, himself, mentally. 20 years ago, we didn't have social media. And, you know, I think players struggled less, I think, with the abuse they suffer. But definitely, Harry Maguire, he is taking. I mean, yeah, some of the humour online is quite funny. I have to admit. Do you think Liverpool will be unbeaten at Anfield for ages again, like 2017 to 2020? Their home record is formidable. There is no doubt on that. Borderline terrifying. Um, yeah, I think that's a record they want to keep intact. They want to make it Fortress Anfield, which wasn't always the case in the 90s and the early 2000s. They want to turn that into a fortress. This is where Man United with Old Trafford, it isn't. Arsenal, the Emirates, it isn't. Um, you want to turn your home stadium into an atmosphere that's hostile to the opposition. That is a fortress. That is puts the fear into the opposition before they take the field, knowing that you have this record to try and break. Um, it will go a long way into you know how do I put it? Continuing Liverpool's success. The longer they can keep winning and having a very good home record at home, the longer they'll be successful. And as I say, I don't see Jurgen Klopp leaving the club anytime soon. Yeah, they've only lost a game at home, so they're not completely invincible. But that home record is formidable since Klopp's been there. It's an absolute formidable home record. It's almost terrifying. If we're being honest, it's a terrifying record that they have at Anfield under Jurgen Klopp. So he's instilled in his team, you know, that kind of mentality, which has got a long way to why they've been so successful in recent years and won silverware and been, chasing titles. And it's got a long, long way to put them where they are now. Absolutely. That is a formidable home record. the fact they've only lost, and Inter can take a lot of credit for winning that away game, um, and getting over that obstacle of this team has got us. This is a fortress. This is a place where you don't go and win. You're lucky to get a draw. So to get that 1-0 win um, shows how good Inter had to play that night. Mm. League and Cup, absolutely formidable domestically. One defeat at home in all competitions this season. That is a terrifying home record. Absolutely terrifying home record. And it's translated to their away form. Their away form, okay, isn't as good, obviously, because they've lost more games away, but that is a pretty scary record to have. And with only one defeat at home this season in all competitions, that is generally terrifying. Almost intimidating. Absolutely intimidating for the opposition. It doesn't matter who the opposition is. Absolutely intimidating record, and that's explains a big part of the reason why they've won the silverware they have, um, and why they're in the position they are, because of the strength at home. Um, this is where a lot of promoted sides, they always say their home record is important, and they've got to have a solid home record. They'll win as many games or get as many points at home as possible to, when they get promoted or if they're in a relegation battle, to stay up. Home form is crucial. Um, and because the league is so competitive now, where teams just take points of each other and it's a battle for most of the season, that could be the deciding factor whether they win the league or not. Maybe a few too many draws at home is why they're chasing Man City. But to close that gap that they have, the cushion that Man City have had earlier in the season till now is generally terrifying. Man City, well, they've still got a brilliant record. That points gap they had is gone completely. Mm, absolutely, the golfing class is huge, absolutely huge, and I think Liverpool could take a massive boost of confidence out of beating Man City in the FA Cup semi-final yesterday. That's going to be a massive shot in the arm, and yeah, it's got to be intimidating. It has to be with what's happening at Man United and clearly the divided dressing room. That's got to be an intimidating away trip. That wasn't the case, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when Man United were the dominant side. That the tables have completely turned, and United are not even close. They're not even close. I wouldn't necessarily it's going to be a 4-0, but the task is now more difficult for Manchester United to get away with even a point. I think a point would be a victory for United morally, but I can't see that happening. I can't see United beating them at all. I, whether United score a goal or not, that would be an achievement. I can't see Man United coming away with anything. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a 4-0, but with the way things are going at Man United and the issues they're having and the negativity surrounding the club and the issues the club faces, I would say it's going to be a tough task to even get a point. I think a point would be a moral victory for Man United. I think in reality, the likelihood is Liverpool smash them. If they play like they played in the first half against Man City, Man United are in serious trouble. Serious trouble. And there's only so long David De Gea can keep bailing them out and keeping scorelines respectable. This season, his form has massively improved, but recent seasons, his form has been questionable. His long-term form hasn't been great. He's had a bounce back this season, but in general, David De Gea, his form has not been great. He's under pressure for the Spain #1 goalkeeping jersey. He's not guaranteed to have that. I predicted 2-0 for the City game, but after watching that game last night, especially how the Reds played in the first half, I think Liverpool will cute. Look, what I do know is in these local derbies, doesn't matter where the clubs are in the league, um, both sides up their game. But on form, Liverpool win the game. But if United go right, we're not going to be humiliated here. We've got to make a statement. It could be a tricky game, but form tells you a lot about where both sides are at. the direction both sides are taking. Um, I can see a Liverpool win. I can't. I don't know if United managed to get a goal. That loss to Everton as well. They don't like going to Merseyside this season. That loss to Everton was shocking, considering Everton losing to Burnley the game before. So yeah, Man United are in trouble. Let's be honest on that. They don't like their trips to Merseyside, even against Everton, who were struggling in the league. They got away, came away with nothing. Um, Man United are in trouble, home and away. Very inconsistent. You can see there's an unsettled dressing room. Um, there's clearly divisions in that dressing room. It is having an impact on performances. Um, it's quite clear that United are not the force they were under Sir Alex Ferguson. There's a lot of issues within the club structures. I don't think Man United are scoring. Only threat they have is Ronaldo. If Ronaldo's a quiet game, I don't see anyone threatening Van Dijk, Konate, Trent Robinson-Hazard. Yeah, I mean, Edison Cavani will run all day. There's no doubt on that. He'll, put an effort in. And he was a good pickup for United. I think he's been United's best player since he signed there, and that's saying something. He was signed there as a depth forward. He's been crucial to getting some crucial wins for United in the last couple of seasons. And there's a reason why they extended him, and rightly so. I think Edison Cavani has been a good pickup for United. But when you've got a player like that who's, again, tail end of his career, was signed as a depth signing to help out the club and the young players, yet he's getting more game time than the young players now, and is a key part of their press, a key part of their counter attack, and he's getting key goals for them. That tells you all you need to know about the state of Man United's dressing room. Cavani's been their most consistent performer, in my opinion. Week in, week out, he puts a shift in. When he's asked to do a job, he does it. Ronaldo, it hasn't worked with Ronaldo. The Ronaldo experiment's been nothing short of disastrous. I think his attitude stinks. And if United do score, I don't see that United defence keeping Salah, Mane, Diaz, Jota, or even Firmino off the bench. How long Firmino remains at the club is going to be interesting, with Diaz being signed, Jota being signed, Salah signing his contract extension, Sadio Mane with how he played the African Cup of Nations, how he played yesterday with 2 goals. And you've got Firmino coming off the bench, and he's on the way out. I mean, Firmino is still a quality player. He would imagine where United would be with Firmino in their lineup rather than Ronaldo alongside Cavani, working with that kind of partnership. Just imagine how different that would be. So you have to question some of the decisions with recruitment United have done. How they utilised Van der Beek, and I think how they destroyed his confidence completely. There's no doubt Van der Beek is a great young talented player, but his confidence is completely destroyed. How Lingard's confidence has gone down the toilet in recent years. Resurgence at West Ham. Surprised West Ham didn't sign him full time in the summer. He's had a better season this season as Jesse Lingard. I think he just needed to get his confidence back. Rashford, his confidence is gone. And he's a good player as well. He's a local product as well as Lingard, and I think he's on the way out. He's unsettled at the club. He's unhappy, which obviously has an impact. There's a lot of issues. A lot of issues there. Man United have got a weak mentality as well. Liverpool got one of the best mentality. They nearly threw away a 3-0 lead yesterday. They were in a comfortable position and allowed Man City a bit of hope in that game. I think they let their foot off the pedal a little bit. Lost a little bit of concentration. But they had enough they could have scored 4 or 5, really. But that's on another day. They do score 4 or 5 against City yesterday. But the difference between United and Liverpool is Liverpool have got that winning mentality now. They've won a lot of trophies in the same time that Man United have won one. They've won how many trophies? United aren't close to competing for the league. Liverpool are. It's completely different to what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. The tables have turned. There's more stability at Liverpool now. Klopp has been there a long time. He's now the longest serving manager in the Premier League. Um, it took him a while to get going, but the owners have given faith with him, had patience with him, and it's paid off. Success doesn't happen overnight. It does take time. With Klopp, it did take a little time. He's gotten to their first FA Cup final in a decade. That's something that's not been discussed. So, yeah, I think Klopp has now got the edge over Guardiola head to head. Now he's worked out Klopp tactically, and the last couple of seasons he's got that one over on Guardiola in recent encounters. The league this season's been 2-2 draws in both games. I think that had a big bearing on the result on yesterday, and I think the Champions League midweek games had a big bearing on the result as well. The squad rotation, Klopp was very, very cheeky with his squad rotation. He took a risk in midweek, it paid off. He put his strongest available team on the field yesterday. Guardiola didn't. The use of substitutions yesterday. Guardiola got at least one of those subs right with Mahrez coming on. I'm surprised he didn't start Mahrez, if I'm honest, or bring him on earlier to have the impact he did. And Man City now in the FA Cup, their record is they're not winning semi-finals. I think they've lost 4 out of 5 their semi-finals they've appeared in recently. They get to the semi-finals and then they get outdone tactically. They got outdone last year by Chelsea. They got outdone this year by Liverpool. They've only won 2 FA Cups since the Sheikh Mansour takeover. I've got a bloody wasp in the flat. Bugger off, please. You can bugger off, please. Go. So you could argue that maybe Man City are more focused on trying to win the Champions League. They still haven't done that, and so they've spent a lot of money. Only made 1 Champions League final. Still can't win it. That again goes a long way to tell you where things are at. Liverpool seem to do better in the cup competitions, League Cup notwithstanding. But I think now looking at it, I think this Man City side is not as dominant as it was with their record-breaking seasons. I think the same can be said for Liverpool. I think it's a little bit closer in that sense. I don't think we see the likes of those 100-point seasons ever again. Those 3 years with those 3 clubs, were breaking records. I don't think I see that happening again anytime soon. Although you never know. I think the squads they have now are not as strong as the squads that went a couple of years before. That is a massive wasp. That is huge. That is really going to piss me off. Please bugger off, wasp. Please bugger off, wasp. Liverpool v Chelsea final could happen 3 times. Yes, it could have Champions League, League Cup, and FA Cup. That would have been. Imagine them playing 3 finals against each other. As it stands, I think Crystal Palace have a very good chance today to upset Palace, and I think actually that could be a complete. And I think that could happen. I think Palace will be fresher by not having a midweek game, whereas as Chelsea obviously had their Champions League excursions and the issues with what's happening off the field, I think is now starting to really have an impact on the squad and the players. I think the way Palace are playing under Vieira with their form, they should not be underestimated. I think Vieira's made that team better. Players have improved. I think the Conor Gallagher situation. I think the FA need to look at cup tying of players out on loan and transfers, because I think that does have a negative impact on Palace. And Chelsea refused to allow him to play, which I think hasn't gone down necessarily that well with neutrals and especially Palace fans and the player himself. However, should Palace make the final, Conor Gallagher plays, and I think he's a crucial part of how Palace play. However, they have won games without him on the pitch, so we'll see what happens with Conor Gallagher going forward, whether Chelsea allow Palace to sign him full time or not. Do you think Palace are starting to become the modern day Burnley or Stoke? I think they're a bit more than Burnley or Stoke. I think the way they play, players like Elise and Wilfried Zaha, they've got more quality than Burnley or Stoke. Style of play. Vieira being manager, they play in the style of they play the way that Vieira played. There's a philosophy about how he wants the game played, and I think he's learned a lot from Wenger. He's learned a lot from his time playing at Arsenal and Manchester City. That cannot be discounted as a player. Seeing the coaching techniques of managers like Wenger and Mancini and Pellegrini, you do pick up these things as a player. You want to go into management. The techniques, the training techniques, dietary changes, the use of analytics, the use of sports science. He's doing a very good job, and if he does, get them to the FA Cup final, if they do win it, then that is a great feather in his cap with the resources that he spent. Team is encouraged Wilfried Zaha to stay, so massive kudos to that. He's got Benteke, who's a cheap version of Lukaku with a bit more upside to his game. Crystal Palace keep a lot of clean sheets as well. They're a strong. Yes, they are very disruptive in the midfield. They are very disruptive defensively. They do strangle opposition sides. They do frustrate opposition sides, but they've got a lot of threats going forward that they didn't have under Roy Hodgson. They've evolved. They've definitely evolved their style of play. They are more expansive now. I think with a couple more key signings, if they get a couple more players in, and if they do get the FA Cup success, I think that can actually encourage players to want to join the club. The spectre of European football, prize money that comes with that. They've obviously got plans to redevelop and expand Selhurst Park and investment in Selhurst Park. So there are plans to make the club better. They've got more financial stability off the field that they didn't have before. They've had a lot of money issues in their history behind the scenes. They've now got that stability off the field, which they lacked for many years. They're more stable as a Premier League club now. They're no longer a yo-yo side. So the foundations were built and cemented by Roy Hodgson when he went in, and Vieira's carried on. I think Chelsea are vulnerable today with how they played in the Champions League in the last couple of midweek games. The off-field dramas that are continuing, the uncertainty with players off contract at the end of the season, key players. Performances have dipped, form has dropped away, whereas Liverpool have closed that gap to Man City. Chelsea have fallen further back into the clutches of the chasing pack. They're not guaranteed to finish third. So there's uncertainty around the playing squad. There's uncertainty about who's going to be the owner next season. I think Palace are going to be fresher as a squad. They're going to be underestimated at their peril. They've got some quick players up front. Elise, Zaha, you've got Benteke who can come off the bench, who can have that physical presence. Missing Conor Gallagher is going to hurt them a little bit, but it doesn't matter if he's in the side or not. They play the same way. They like disrupting the play. They get a bit physical at times. So that's a little bit of Vieira's mould. So there you go. If they do get through, losing 3 finals in a row is almost on the Leicester City record of FA Cup appearances in the final without a win. Even though Chelsea have actually obviously had the more success than Leicester. I think Leicester hold the record for 5 FA Cup finals without winning. So that's an unenviable record that you don't want, regardless of the success previously. If that becomes finals in a row without lifting the silverware, that's a record that Chelsea don't want. But clearly, Champions League notwithstanding in recent years under Tuchel, they have lost a fair few finals. League Cup this season, FA Cup final the last 2 seasons. You have to bear that in mind. That yes, they're not as dominant in the competition. In their last few finals appearances, they've lost 3 out of 4 finals or something that they've appeared in recent times, and I'm including the League Cup in that. So yes, in pressure games, they're not getting the job done. They're not performing as they should perform. They are being outplayed. The opposition seem to want it more. We saw that in the FA Cup final last year. They were not good enough. Leicester deserved to win that. We saw it against Arsenal. Arsenal deserved to win that. The opposition wanting it more. I'm not so sure who's lost actually the most. I know Leicester got the record of losing the most before winning, um, losing the most consecutive finals they've appeared in at 5, before winning again. They obviously won a couple of League Cups, so they do know how to win the club culture. But it will be interesting. I'll have to see who's lost the most FA Cup finals historically. That would be an interesting little stat to look at. Actually, that's a stat. Let's actually see who's lost the most FA Cup finals as a club, because because they've won a fair few, so their win percentages. Let's have a look. Who has lost the most FA Cup finals? Let's have a look. I still think it's. Oh, here we go. QPR, Birmingham City, Crystal Palace, and Watford have each lost 2 finals without ever winning the trophy. No team has ever made the final more than twice, not winning. Let's have a look. History of the FA Cup. So Palace have been in 2 finals and never won. So that's interesting. Records and statistics: individual, most wins, most goals, scoring first, scoring streaks, fastest, hat tricks, penalties, own goals, age records, disciplinary, accidents, nationality, other individual firsts. Team records: most goals, winning streaks, undefeated, most final losses. 8. Everton and Man United have lost 8 each. So there you go. The record stands equal between Everton and Man United. There you go. Tournament game streaks. Man United became the quickest winners of all time, apart from the special circumstances of 1873. They played their first match on the 4th of 12 postponements and won the final on the 25th of May, 82 days later. Biddeford played 13 games over 5 rounds. Competition records. 1910. 14 consecutive finals, including 3 replays, 17 matches in which the losing side failed to score. Man United became the only team to win the FA Cup from a lower division after being drawn against top division opposition every round. In 1959, Nottingham Forest fielded the same 11 players in every round of the competition, 9 matches including replays. 76-77 was the largest number of matches in the competition proper, not 173. That's due to replays. A record 763 clubs were accepted for the 2011-2012 FA Cup. Doubles, trebles, oddities. Here we go. The only game played on Christmas Day in the FA Cup took place in 1888. Linfield Athletic beating Cliftonville 7-0. Birmingham set the record for the shortest FA Cup run. They forgot to send in their entry form. 21. 31. West Brom became the only team to win the FA Cup and get promoted in the same season, defeating Birmingham City 2-1 in the final. There you go. 46. Charlton Athletic became the first team to reach the final despite losing a match in their cup run due to one-off 2-legged format for that season. 46. Weird. Man United won the competition in 1990 in a replay against Palace. That was the very famous where Ian Wright scored in the replays. Was United managed Ferguson's first trophy at United, and the success is seen by many as having saved him from being dismissed after 4 seasons without silverware. The first time it was played under a roof was in 02-03 at Millennium Stadium, Arsenal Southampton. Arsenal won that 1-0. Wigan Athletic became the first side to win the FA Cup and be relegated in the same season after Man City won in the 2013 final. Right, okay. Let's have a look at some other records. Let's have a look. Individual most FA Cup wins by a player is held by Ashley Cole, who won it 7 times with Arsenal and Chelsea. With Chelsea's victory over Portsmouth in the 2010 final, Cole beat the record of 5 by some other Jimmy Forrest of Blackburn. He's appeared in 8 finals, having been on the losing side in 2001. Yeah, record for most FA Cup wins by a manager is held by Arsene Wenger with 7. Most goals, Harry Kersham has scored the most goals in the FA Cup with 49 goals in 44 games. His record's been held continuously since 1887. Ian Rice was the closest, who scored 44 in his career from 79 to 98. Doc Dowden scored 19 FA goals in a single season for Wimbledon, the 1929-1930 season. Peter Osgood scored for Chelsea in the 1970 final, became the last player to date and the 9th in total score in every round of the Cup. The one time between Bournemouth and Boscombe Athletic versus Margate, Ted McGougle scored 9 of Bournemouth's 11 goals. Scoring first, Thomas Hughes in 1876 was the first to score more than once in the final in a replay match, which Wanderers defeated Old Etonians 3-0 in the same final. Alexander Bonsall from the losing side became the first to score in 2 consecutive finals, both of which his team lost. Own goal. Eddie Kelly from Arsenal became the first substitute to score when he came on the pitch in the 70th minute of the 71 final, and he scored in the 96th minute. Stuart McCall from Everton scored 2 goals after coming in off the bench in the 89 final in the 90th and 102nd minutes. 2001, Dagenham Redbridge FC goalkeeper Tony Roberts became the first goalkeeper in the history of the tournament to score a goal. This happened in the 4th round qualifying game against Basingstoke Town. Scoring streaks, Jimmy Brown of Blackburn became the first to score in 3 consecutive finals from 1884 to 1886, winning all 3. In 1887, Aston Villa legend Archie Hunt became the first player to score in every round of the FA Cup in Villa's victorious 1887 campaign, beginning from the second round as Villa had a bye in the first. This feat was bettered by Sandy Brown of Tottenham, who scored in all rounds from the first. Didier Drogba is the first player to score in 4 FA Cup finals in 2012. He did that feat. Fastest goals in the FA Cup. Aston Villa's Bob Chatt scored the winner in the 1895 final with the then fastest goal of just 30 seconds. His record stood until broken by Louis Saha, who scored in 25 seconds in 2009. On the 30th of February 2010, Jimmy Keeb of Reading scored the fastest goal in the FA Cup proper after just 9 seconds in their 5th round game against West Brom. Hat-tricks. William Townley scored the first hat-trick in the FA Cup final for Blackburn when they beat Sheffield Wednesday 6-1 in 1890. 1894, Jimmy Logan became the second player to score 3 goals in the final of the competition, with Notts County beating Bolton 4-1. The third hat-trick in an FA Cup final was scored by Stan Mortensen for Blackpool against Bolton in the 53 Cup final. Blackpool won the game 4-3, so he was on the losing side with Stan Mortensen. He was a great player. In 1922, England amateur international Wilfred Minter created an unusual scoring record. In an era when there was some dispute whether or not a hat-trick had to be scored as consecutive goals, Minter performed the feat twice in one match, as well as scoring a 7th as he scored Auburn City's goals against Dulwich Hamlet. Despite this feat, they actually lost the game 8-7. Penalties. The first penalty in the final was not converted until 1910, with Albert Shepherd scoring from the spot in the Newcastle 2-0 Barnsley replay. The first missed penalty occurred in 1913, with Charlie Wallace from Aston Villa being the unlucky player, although Villa won 1-0 over Sunderland. 2 penalties were not converted until 94, when Eric Cantona kicked from the spot in the 60th and 66 minutes to contribute to Man United's 4-0 win over Chelsea. In 88, Wimbledon's Dave Besant became the first goalkeeper to save a penalty in a FA Cup final at Wembley when he denied John Aldridge of Liverpool, although Charlie Wallace of Aston Villa was the first to miss a penalty in the final. Wimbledon defeated the league champions 1-0 in that game, and so Besant also became the first goalkeeper to captain an FA Cup winning side. Own goals. Lord Kinnaird scored the first own goal in the final, with Wanderers defeating Oxford University 2-1 in 1877. 1946 final, Bert Turner from Charlton Athletic became famous for scoring from both sides. First, he put a goal in his own net, equalised from a free kick a minute later. Tommy Hutchinson would repeat the feat in reverse for Man City in 1981, as did Gary Mabbutt of Tottenham Hotspur in 87. Age records. Billy Hampton of Newcastle United, the oldest FA Cup finalist, was 41 years and 257 days old when his side beat Villa 2-0 in the 24 final. In 1983, Norman Whiteside, at 18 years and 18 days, became the youngest player to score in an FA Cup final whilst playing for Manchester United against Brighton Hove Albion. As of 2020, this record remains unbroken. September the 12th, 2020, Evan de Grub scored a brace for Bristol Manor Farm in their 5-1 victory over Cadbury Heath, aged 16 years and 54 days, to become the youngest ever goal scorer in the competition. And in 2004, Chris Weston of Millwall became the youngest ever player to play in the final at the age of 17 years and 119 days, beating the record of James Prinsep of Clapham Rovers set in the 1879 final. So there's some great records there. Um, yeah, there's some great ones. Yeah, some really great ones there. Most final losses, as I say, Man United and Everton. That's got to be something that um, it's got to be discussed. Yeah, there's got to be some pretty cool ones in there. Penalty shootouts, doubles, trebles. Uh, there's some great records in there. Chelsea always seem to lose the FA Cup final, though. I would thought they would have had that record. No, it's Man United and Everton jointly hold that record with 8 defeats each. So that's an interesting stat. And if Man United or Everton do make the FA Cup final in future seasons and lose, then they will hold that ultimate record. Without Google, that information would have taken ages to find. Yes, it would have. It would have. Without good old trusty Wikipedia. But I have to admit, you know, I was surprised that Everton and Man United hold the record for the most cup final defeats. And until Leicester won the FA Cup last year, they had the record for the most FA Cup final appearances without a win at 5. So now it stands at 2, and Palace are one of those clubs that have that record. So which is why I want to see Palace make the final. I want to see Palace go on and win, quite honestly, so they can get off their balance sheet. Really, I want to see Palace do well. I think it'll be a positive for English football. Um, and I really appreciate what Patrick Vieira has done for the club since he took over. I think he's really, it's taken some time, but the board have stuck with him. I don't think Vieira is going anywhere anytime soon. But there are some managers under pressure, so we may see some managerial changes in the Premier League in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if other clubs decide to change direction with the manager they have. Arteta's under pressure because they lost yesterday. Conte's had a bit of pressure this season at Spurs, and there are issues with Spurs and the direction that club's taking. Will Harry Kane remain a Spurs player for next season? That's an open debate. Obviously, he's been linked with a move away. He's agitated for a move away. If bound to reach finals all the time, you can't win them all. Look at Buffalo Bills. I think it was a record of 4 in a decade or 4 in 5 years. The Buffalo Bills. They had a very good side as well. And that is a very interesting stat that they have. All their Super Bowl appearances, I think they had 3 in a row, and I think they had 4 in 5 years or something. They had a very, very good side when they were attempting to win those Super Bowls. Very, very good team at the time. But the team hasn't been close to going back to a Super Bowl since. That was their championship window. As people say, you have a championship window, and that was the Buffalo Bills championship window, and they haven't been close since. Um, people, every professional sports league, uh, the term championship window or premiership window or is used a lot. We see it in the NRL, we see it in the AFL, we see it in the NHL, we see it in the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA. You have this so-called window of opportunity where you seem to be at the peak of your powers, and that's with the players you have and the players coming through the system. That's allegedly. I find that a bit frustrating. I think with the right coaching and the right team chemistry, on paper you can weaken your team and actually become better. Um, we've seen that with a whole host of teams. They lose a couple of players who've been key to the squad or the roster, key to the sustained, competitiveness of a team. And then they go and win after those players leave. Um, so, um, yeah, as I say, like you can't win every game. No team can win every game. You're not going to win every title. But as long as teams are seen to be competing for silverware and getting close to silverware, then I think the fan base can be happy with, okay, we're in the competition, we've made finals, we qualified for Europe, we're challenging for titles. With clubs like Man United and Spurs, and to a certain extent Arsenal, they haven't been as competitive. They've not been as stably run. They've had a lot of managerial changes, and out of those three, only two of them have won trophies in recent years. With Man United with the Europa League and Arsenal with the FA Cup. Tottenham haven't won for 14 years. As a Spurs fan, will Levy leave will get a new owner to Spurs? Are Spurs well run for profits? I'm assuming you're a Spurs fan. I'm not a Spurs fan. Daniel Levy is part of the ownership group as well as chairman. He has a 20% stake in the club. The owner is his boss. And so, unless the owner leaves, Levy will stay. I can't see Levy losing his position as chairman. Yes, you could argue that Spurs are a good business model. Much like Man United, before COVID, they were making money. And of course, they invested that money that they have made in the stadium rebuild. That's obviously cost them money, and then COVID's exacerbated the debts that they have. On a business model, yes, that they are making money. On a footballing model, no, they're not successful. They haven't got the squad balance right. They regularly chop and change manager. They put more investment into the stadium than the playing squad for corporate deals with the NFL. So that was designed to make money. There was nothing really wrong with the old White Hart Lane, if we're being brutally honest. But keeping up with the Joneses. I think because Levy has an ownership stake in the club, and his boss is the club owner, unless there's a change of ownership, Levy will stay in position. Unless things get really bad and they have a shocking season, and there is a lot of pressure placed upon from the fan base, I can't see Levy going anywhere from his position because he has a stake in the ownership of the club. He has share. He has, I could think, a 20% share or something stake in the club with shares. Some of the footballing decisions make no sense, and it has backfired. And the club have come out and said, "Yes, we've got things wrong." They still haven't got a title sponsor for the stadium, which is a problem. But yes, the NFL has signed a contract with Spurs to use White Hart Lane for NFL London Series games. That gets you some of the revenue back. That pays off some of the debt on the stadium. But obviously, COVID hampered that in 2020, so that's a loss of revenue. So it's going to take longer to pay the stadium off. And every season without a trophy, again, that's less prize money. You win prize money for winning trophies. And so therefore, less prize money, which again takes longer to pay off the stadium debt. That lack of investment in the playing squad for that 18 months, I think, has proven crucial down the line. The managerial hunt this summer, and then Conte rejecting the offer in the summer, and then Nuno getting appointed, and then sacking Nuno, bringing Conte in. That was completely mishandled by the board, which Levy is chairman, and frustrated Spurs fans. But it's the lack of success. It doesn't matter, if it's the old White Hart Lane or the new White Hart. That lack of success over a sustained period has got to be something that needs addressing. And why is that? That's got to be the culture within the dressing room, and that's got to be the behind-the-scenes structures of the club, the day-to-day running of the club, because that does have an impact on a manager's position and the pressure that comes on the manager. And Conte has at times this season looked very frustrated. And that defeat at Brighton, okay, Arsenal didn't win their game, but it makes it a very more congested battle for fourth place. West Ham on a million miles away. Wolves on a million miles away. So they're not guaranteed to be the fourth place side. It's a very congested battle for that fourth Champions League spot. And it's this. They blew their championship window was 2016 to 2018, and that's my opinion. That was their window with the squad they had with Pochettino. And in the 2016 season, they were actually at one point, doing better than Leicester. They had a better goal difference. They were slightly ahead of Leicester, and then Leicester just kept going, and Tottenham stopped playing, and they went from joint top, battling for first place, to finishing third. And quite a distance third. They just stopped playing, and I think that had a knock-on impact going forward. With that FA Cup semi-final, lost from a winning position to Pochettino out the door, Mourinho in, Mourinho out the door, Nuno in, Nuno out the door, Conte in. They've had a lot of managerial change in a very short amount of time, and guess what? Still no silverware. So that lack of managerial stability and over a significant period of time, you've had Tim Sherwood, you've had Harry Redknapp, Martin Jol, Ande Ramos, how many more managers? Villas Boas, a lot of managers in there. And in that time, other clubs have taken that next step to silverware and taken that progression. And I think it's lucky that Leicester have had a down season this season. But if Leicester were still sniffing around like they were last year, I think Tottenham are further down the table. Leicester took a step back this year. The difference is Leicester have won silverware, Tottenham haven't. And Brendan Rodgers has been given the backing of his owner and their board. And there's your difference. Yes, they've had a bit of managerial turnover at Leicester as well, but now they've got Brendan Rodgers. They've stuck with him, and they're going to stick with him, I think. And they're they could get into a European final, which Tottenham, admittedly, that Champions League final, that was a shocking performance there. The League Cup final when they sacked Mourinho days before, that was a stupid decision. That was a signing up for the European Super League. Backfired. The way they handled the COVID pandemic. There's a lot of negativity about how the club is run off the field, and the negative headlines I do think impact the players on the field. Whether that's fully justified or not is another thing. It's the same with Chelsea. The negative headlines off the field I think are having an impact on that squad, and I do think Palace have a very, very good chance today of upsetting Chelsea. But yeah, Tottenham 14 trophyless seasons. In that time, Arsenal won 3 FA Cups, league finishing position. That's local bragging rights. But when you're not bringing silverware in with the players you've had and the investment that's gone into the squad and the constant player turnover and the managerial turnover, it starts to raise the question of really they could have won several League Cups in that time, and people go, "Oh, it's only the League Cup. It's still silverware." It's that winning mentality. It's something that if you get that first trophy, the second trophy is not far behind. Look at Liverpool. Long trophy drought. They get that first trophy, and then more trophies follow. More finals follow. And that's the difference between Spurs and clubs around them. Is Leicester, they get that Premier League. A few years later, they get that FA Cup and Charity Shield. So they have that little purple patch. They're not on the same level as your Chelseas and your Man Cities and your Liverpools, but Leicester have proven that they're a successful side. It's how they run off the field as well as on the field. It's how the club structures work with support for the manager, who's ever the manager is. Shrewd transfer spending, good investment in the community. Building that connection between the fan base and the ownership and the players, and that's the difference. So winning that first trophy is crucial because it leads to further success. And then when you've proven you can win that first trophy and you win more trophies, players want to come and play for your club rather than players want to leave the club because they can get success elsewhere. The only player to move on from Tottenham who's yet to win a trophy elsewhere is Dele Alli, because he only transferred in the January transfer window. So every other player since Gareth Bale was initially sold, who they bought in and then sold on again, has won elsewhere. There are other players who left after Gareth Bale left who've won silverware elsewhere at a different club. That tells you what you need to know about various issues of player development, recruitment, the club culture, the dressing room. Is it divided or not? I think it is. The managerial turnaround, the handling of the sacking of Mourinho and the replacement with Nuno, and then Nuno being their ninth choice manager, replacing him with Conte, who had rejected them in the summer. What a change between July and the summer and when he was appointed. A whole host of questions. And then as soon as Conte comes in, he starts freshening up the squad. He moves players on, like Dele Alli. The player turnover at Spurs, again, players who will leave Spurs and win trophies elsewhere. Dele Alli, we'll see what happens with him at Everton and whether he wins a trophy at another club later on. So that there is that kind of thought process. The Gareth Bale loan experiment, how much they were paying in his wages, but they wouldn't give other players a wage increase, which left a little bit of bitter taste with certain players, which divided the playing squad. Harry Kane's contract and Son's contract. Again, not saying other players we can't afford to give you a little pay increase or a bonus, but they're more than happy to sign these massive contract extensions for other players for big money, which again led to some bitterness and division within the playing squad. And so those players went elsewhere. All those kind of questions keep getting raised. So how the player management side of things, when it comes to contracts, transfer policy, a whole host of question marks with Spurs. And that chronic lack of success is noted. They've won 2 trophies, I think. Is it 2 trophies? No, I think it's 2 trophies in my lifetime. Their lack of success, even though they've been a top flight club for a very long time, their lack of success is absolutely striking. With the players they've had play for them in the past, great players, both English and overseas players, great international players, great quality players who've had great careers in the game, who've won a lot of silverware. That chronic lack of success is very, very striking. And when you do compare them to Arsenal and you do compare them to Chelsea, big London rivals, the contrast is there. It's not because the owner lacks money, but you compare it to their big London rivals in Chelsea, especially Arsenal, and the chronic lack of success in comparison. It tells you what you need to know. I mean, yes, in the latter stages of Wenger's time at Arsenal, and since they moved to the Emirates, but they've still won 3 trophies. In the time that Tottenham have won the League Cup and then not won anything, Arsenal have won 3 FA Cups, which is the better trophy to win. So 3 trophies to 1 since 2008. And all 3 of those FA Cups have come in the last few years as well for Arsenal. They've all come within the last 4 or 5 years for Arsenal, whereas Spurs is in the previous over a decade ago. So on Arsenal side that are declining in their fortunes, that aren't at the top of the Premier League, still winning silverware, and they win an FA Cup with 3 different managers. I think that's a first, having 3 different managers at the same club with a couple of years apart between them. I mean, 3 managers in 6 years or something. It's a very striking stat. Chelsea, yes, high managerial turnover, but the success they've had in the same period, in regards to Tottenham and Chelsea, it's a no-brainer. Premier Leagues, Champions Leagues, Europa Leagues, League Cups, FA Cups, 1 League Cup. So looking at their nearest rivals in London is striking. You've got Palace, who are about to have an FA Cup semi-final in an hour and a half's time. They kick off, and they have a very good chance of making the final. West Ham have a very good chance of making a European final this season. So their league rivals in London, their local rivals are having positivity. I mean, Chelsea have obviously got the off-field dramas, but the window for Tottenham to win was 2016 to 2019. That has passed. That lack of investment in the playing squad for 18 months is still having that knock-on effect now. The stadium debt is going to hamper this club going forward with the new UEFA spending rules that are coming in, that are going to be strictly enforced. I fear unless they start offloading some players and bringing in prize money by winning silverware and being very shrewd in developing players internally rather than having to bring players in the transfer market and actually develop their youth system a bit more and bring more youth products through, is going to have a detrimental impact. So yeah, I mean, if you're a Spurs fan, I have sympathy. Whether Conte can actually bring success next season, that is interesting. If they can win a trophy next season, that paves the way for further silverware. It paves the way for when you are recruiting players and are developing players, they want to play for you. At the moment, players I don't think want to play for Tottenham. They want to leave. And the squad turnover and the amount of players that have come in since Gareth Bale was initially sold to now, very, very high. All the players signed with the Gareth Bale money have all left. Gareth Bale has come and gone again. So there is that that issue of player retention and keeping, the squad together. Um, yeah, Daniel Levy has an ownership stake as well as being chairman. He has a stake in the owner's company. Um, so unless the owner wants to sell up or Levy ends up getting sacked or changes position within the company he's part of, I can't see Levy leaving as chairman or standing down anytime soon. Whether going forward that's good for Tottenham or not is nothing. That's another debate entirely. But it is what it is. With UEFA bringing in these new club spending rules, um, it clubs have got to be compliant within. I think they're given a sliding scale of compliance, and they're given about 3 years grace to get within that sliding scale of compliance. Otherwise, they face financial and European penalties and fines. And I'm not sure if you can appeal. I mean, you probably could appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport in regards like PSG and Man City did in regards to their financial fair play breaches. But that's another thing with UEFA bringing in these new spending rules to replace financial fair play in a couple of seasons. I think next season is going to be very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And hopefully, with Alexander Serafin, they are very strict in the enforcement of these new spending rules because what the pandemic has exposed is how badly governed and how weak the governance has been and how mismanaged the finances of the sport have been for so long. Um, and the unsustainable economics of the sport has been highlighted. Um, and I'm surprised more clubs haven't actually gone bust, other than Macclesfield. I really am. Um, and the clubs like Derby County and Chelsea having very uncertain futures going forward, and they are uncertain, and Everton as well to a certain extent, having uncertain futures going forward because of various reasons is deeply troubling as well. So it'll be interesting to see how how this all plays out with financial spending in the Premier League, and in European football. I don't see Neymar's transfer record being broken anytime soon. I think it will be broken eventually when finances recover and the global economy recovers in time. But I can't see that changing anytime soon. Not for a very long time, at least for 10 years. I don't see how any club can justify that kind of spend at all. Just cannot see how a club can justify that. Anyway, I'm going to call that a day. Thank you very much for watching this live stream. Thank you very much for all your questions for the last 2 hours and 12 minutes. I mean, if anyone's got any other further questions, well, please add them before I decide to wind it down. It's been a very interesting discussion, some very interesting questions. And yeah, we did a bit of research on the FA Cup records and some really interesting facts about the FA Cup over its history. And if Palace make the final and lose the final, they'll have the most consecutive finals without a win as an active record, which I don't think any club wants. I think it'll be if Palace do make the final, I think they have a very good chance of winning it and dashing Liverpool's hopes of winning a quadruple. Although Liverpool still have a chance of quadruple this season, which again is exceptionally hard to do. So thank you very much for all your questions, and I'll have some more videos. When is the next live Q? I'm working tomorrow, but it's Easter Monday, so I'll have an early start and an early finish. There might be one tomorrow, and I just do them mostly on weekends. I don't really have a set schedule for live stream question and answer sessions at the moment, which maybe I should. I don't really have a set schedule at the moment. I haven't really put a lot of thought into having a set a schedule for live streams and question and answer sessions. Partly because of my job. If the channel was a full-time thing, then I could be a bit more organised and structured with the channel. So because I have a full-time job at the moment, it's very difficult to schedule things with the hours that I work and bits and pieces like that. But I'll probably have one tomorrow afternoon after work. because it is Easter Monday and a lot of people are off work, so there'll be a more available audience, I think, to watch, because it is obviously in this country a bank holiday, a national holiday, whereas in other parts of the world it isn't. Some other countries have a different way of dealing with the Easter holidays. I haven't got a set schedule at the moment. As I say, until if and when the channel gets monetized and starts being profitable over making me more money than my job, and I would love to do this full time. Until I can do this on a full time basis and I can actually put myself an organised schedule in place. At the moment, it's as and when I feel like it. It all depends. I don't want to do too many live streams because I've noticed on the analytics it does harm when I post videos. The amount of views that videos get, it does have a knock on effect on video views when I post videos online. That is a noticeable thing with the analytics. So I haven't put in place a definite live stream schedule. But because it is the Easter weekend and a lot of people have tomorrow off work, I mean, I don't, unfortunately, but a lot of people are off work and off school and off college and off university and are on holiday, there are more people who would possibly, would want to view. But it's an interesting question. As I say, until the channel becomes self-sufficient and is making money again with YouTube's monetization rules and monetization policy, it's a bit difficult to put in a guaranteed schedule in place. But most of my live streams are on the weekends. When I'm not doing anything and there's nothing on live sport wise that I'm not watching. It's mostly on weekends like Saturdays and Sundays and some evenings as well, like a Friday evening, depending on what I'm doing. I do have at the end of the month I've got 3 days off from work, booked holiday. Which I've been told to book by my manager. So I've got the 27th, 28th, and 29th off work. So there's a possibility that on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, in 2 weeks' time, that I do some content. It's a possibility for that. But again, I may do an update video and try and schedule Q&As. Most likely on weekends. That was the initial scheduling when I first moved into this this flat I'm in now, where I'm living now. However, we'll see. I think is the answer. It's something that I've got to think about and work around my work and other things that other things I do. I do have a lot of other things that I've got to focus on in the next coming months. But it's a fair question, and it's something that I think I will address by doing a video and updating and scheduling, most likely for Saturdays and Sundays in the afternoons. Like now, I think is a good time to do it on the weekends. And in the summer, obviously, there's less live, league football, rugby union. More people are off work and off, taking breaks from education in the summer. But again, I have noticed in the analytics and the view counts that live streams do impact how my video uploads do. When I'm discussing a player transfer, a managerial sacking, a team struggling with relegation or promotion, major sports news, I do notice there is an active drop off in views following a live stream. So, and with women's Euros coming up this summer and other major sport events coming up, the Rugby League World Cup and the Football World Cup, there will be a lot of content in relation to those major tournaments. We've obviously got the transfer window that will be opening soon, and that will be very interesting with the player transfers in when it comes to football. We've got things like the NRL, which I follow. We've got the Stanley Cup playoffs, and then free agency and the draft. There's some big news in the NHL that's going to be coming out in the summer. Obviously, Major League Baseball, they've returned to play following their lockout, and whether there's labour peace until the CBA is up for negotiation in 5 years' time. I mean, I don't think we'll get to the next CBA negotiations in Major League Baseball. I do think there's going to be further labour unrest there. There's also a chance in the summer for me to do some more sports history videos as well, because I find them very, very interesting. They're a great content filler when there's not a lot of sports news going on. Of course, England, the ECB are looking for a new cricket captain because Joe Root's, stood down as England captain. And that's going to be interesting whether he stays in the Test side or not. And that'll be very interesting what his playing future with England is. There's a lot of talk about Stuart Broad or Ben Stokes getting the captaincy and how that's going to play out. There's a fair bit to discuss, but when it comes to live streams, I haven't got a set schedule, but they generally take place on a weekend. I might do a live stream every day on a weekend. I might schedule that in, but I will do an update video on what I plan to do with live streams going forward. But most likely on weekends is a fair shout for live stream content. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys. I really appreciate all the questions. Some really interesting discussions we've had. And yeah, there's some really interesting FA Cup records we discussed as well. And I know it's more football based, this live stream, than discussing multi sports, but there was a few non-footballing questions that came up, and they're always, it's always interesting discussing multiple sports, in the chat. I know football is obviously the most popular global sport, and with the end of the season coming and lots of big, important games coming along, obviously it is what it is. We'll see what happens to Derby County in the off season. We'll see what happens to Chelsea with their buyout. Who's going to be the new owners? And of course, we'll have to see how Palace and Chelsea do in the FA Cup semi-final and who wins that All-London FA Cup tie. It's going to be a good game. I think Palace are going to upset things and make their third FA Cup final. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more content for you very, very, very soon.